Brass Method students. I hope you are all doing well and you're getting some sunlight in this crazy time. I'm here with my wife, Meredith. She is a fellow music educator and fellow horn player. We both met in the horn studio at the University of Alabama when we were getting our master's degrees. And so, yeah, Meredith, you want to talk about your background and where you teach?
Sure. Right now, I teach at Thompson Middle School. It's in Alabaster, Alabama, just south of Birmingham. We have around anywhere from between like 130 to 150 sixth graders and about that many seventh and eighth graders as well. We have about 300 kids. In my previous spot, I was in Winfield, which is actually where I'm from. So that was, always an experience there. It's interesting going back to where you're from to teach in a good way. But it was a lot smaller of a program. In the high school band, there were about 90. And in the middle school program, one of the biggest beginning bands ever was in my second year there with 40 kids in sixth grade band. So that was pretty cool. So it was two totally different situations. One very rural, a lot smaller program they're working on building. And Thompson was, already established. So it's just, what we do from there with that program. But yeah, I also went to Alabama for my undergrad, studied with Skip during that time. Yeah, that's about it.
And just a little bit background about me, since I'll be participating in this conversation as well. I got my bachelor's at Troy University and got my master's at the University of Alabama, and now I'm working on my PhD. I taught at a public school near Birmingham in Bessemer, Alabama, called Oak Grove High School. There we taught 6th grade through 12th grade. And then I also I was a head band director at a private school in Montgomery called Trinity Presbyterian School. And there I taught 5th grade through 12th grade. And there I had a little bit of a different experience. And so a lot of the things that Meredith and I are going to talk about today are going to be from two different lenses, where I started kids in 5th grade and then sort of held their hand going into 6th grade, where Meredith starts them in the 6th grade. So there's some different techniques and strategies there that we'll discuss. But basically today we're going to kind of add on to the interview we did with Skip. But we're going to talk about some stuff more specifically targeted towards teaching horn to beginners and some of the experiences of middle school band directors in general, which is arguably one of the hardest jobs, just period. So I guess the first thing we're going to talk about is instrument selection and tryout and recruitment. And like I said, that's a little bit of a different experience for me. What is that like for you?
Well, if you're at Winfield or Thompson, it's a totally different experience too. It's even if you're at a school like Thompson, if you go down the street, it might be something different. It just depends on what you want to do. But the most ergonomic, economic way to go about it. We have people come in for each instrument that we offer. This year, we actually didn't start tubas. We started with euphonium, and in the second semester, we switch over from trombone and euphonium to do that. So that's kind of, we can talk about that, dive into that later, but we have a separate instructor that is none of the band directors for each instrument. We set up 2 nights from 5 to 8 at the school, and that helps the rising 6th graders be able to come and be familiar with the building. And they come in with big eyes and they're so excited about seeing the new place. And they also get specialized instruction from each of those people. And we can tell them certain things we're looking for, certain characteristics. And for the horn, it's really important to us that we have an actual horn player test on the horn. Yeah. That is pretty, you can be very successful not doing that, but for us, we try to be very particular.
Yeah. Well, the horn's very specialized.
It is.
Yeah.
And so what we look for in a horn player specifically, obviously you'd like to have, super smart, super motivated kid on like any instrument. But the horn is kind of finicky. So what we look for are kids that seem motivated. If they have good grades, that's a good indicator of motivation.
Sure.
Not necessarily intelligence, right. But that helps, obviously.
Yeah. Because you're going to take all the kids regardless.
Right. Yeah. Right. And you don't have to be an astrophysicist to play the horn. You don't have to. Yeah. I tell my kids all the time, if you follow instructions, you'll be good at whatever you want to do, and that includes playing the horn.
And that's one of the things I try I just want to emphasize something that you said. One of do we look for intelligence? Do we look at grades? And it's not that they are good students. It's what is them being a good student evidence of? What are their characteristics of with it that may help them accomplish something that has a lot of roadblocks and obstacles? Do they have the grit to deal with maybe the fact that they're going to be squeaking and squawking and not be as confident sounding as the trumpets who are sitting right next to them? Same thing with your oboe players. You don't necessarily want somebody that's going to be easily defeated.
Right. I mean, because yes. If you don't, that's just part of the experience of being a horn player. You're going to miss notes. You're going to miss them a lot, but it's okay as long as you know how to recover. Yes. You teach them how to recover too, and that's a part of the process, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna happen. And that's just something you kind of accept. And while you're teaching, you obviously try to avoid that as much as possible.
Right.
Don't put them in opportunities to make them miss notes. But anyway, so rewinding back a little bit, you look for that. You look for motivation and perseverance, because that's what the horn is all about. It helps if you can determine what their pitch is like, if they can hear and match notes really well. I've done instrument testings, like I've gone for other schools to do it, and when they come to me, I'll just sing a few things. I do a steady tone, and I just ask them to say la. It's super easy. And just la, can they match? And they sing it back. And then I do stepwise, just like 3, 2, 1, la, la, la. And then do skips, 1, 3, 5, la, la, la. And if they can do that, that kind of gives me a good idea of can they match? Can they hear well enough to know if they're playing the right note on the horn?
Right.
Because if you don't know if you're playing the right note or not, you're not going to get better because you don't know how to fix anything. Right. And that's another specific skill that you have to teach in band.
Yeah.
I mean that's part of it.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much the biggest things that I look for. Somebody who's motivated, who can persevere, that has at least decent pitch. And I don't think that horn players are like diamonds in the rough. I think most kids have decent pitch.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that you can just teach.
Yeah. Well, like people, when they're, they'll look at, can they buzz this? Can they, are they able to, form their embouchure? To some extent, you can pretty much teach anybody to do that. Everybody is capable of flexing these muscles and then generating a buzz. Right. Pretty much everyone can do that. So, it's whether or not they have the patience to fail, and then you can get them to do the other things that you want them to do.
Now, I will say that the horn players that we rate the highest are ones that can play C, F, C. So concert B flat, or concert F, concert B flat, below C, or low F. It's just going to be easier for them. They might fail less, than somebody else has to work a little bit harder. Yeah. But that is something, if they can do it naturally without a lot of instruction, that's really helpful. Right.
But if the kid, say that a kid can't, match pitch, or they can't necessarily buzz, but they really, really want to play the French horn, what do you say to that kid or that parent?
It depends. I would kind of see how they feel about another instrument. And if they are just bound and determined to play an instrument, they will probably practice it enough to get it. I mean, you'll find that on any instrument, not just horn.
Yeah.
But I would definitely, if it's like really rough, we'll kind of explore other options.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this? Maybe sleep on it.
Or maybe if they have success on something else, and then you're like, man, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Try to really positively reinforce that. Yeah.
Yes. Because that's what we do when we see score sheets with if they came in and they're like, I'm gonna play the horn so bad, but they do really well on trumpet or clarinet or something, it's like, it's that same thing. Oh my gosh, you got the highest score on clarinet, before you address the other thing.
So while we're on the topic, this is sort of a branch off, but obviously you start kids on the French horn. Yeah. But let's get to the controversy of starting kids on trumpet and then moving them to horn. I obviously know the answer because you start them on horn, but what do you think about people who approach it that way?
I mean, I think that's one way to do it, and if that works for you and your program,
it is one way.
Yeah, it is one way. If it works for you in your program, go for it. That's fine. And some people are in a financial situation where it's just easier. You don't have to have as many horns to have at school. So you can issue everybody one single horn, nobody's or one a singular instrument on a single horn. That's a different topic too. But I like to start on horn because it is different. The embouchure is different. The fingerings they're different. There is the F and the B flat side of the horn that shares some things, but it's when kids learn one thing one way, when you change that, they have to unlearn something, relearn a different thing, and they're learning it on the horn, which is already really difficult.
Right.
I think it's just easier to start them on the horn, even if you're heterogeneous classes, everybody all at once.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had success stories that way. Maybe just don't start as many. But I really like to start on the horn because it is so much different.
And while we're on that topic, I just want to add a little bit of a blurb. A common misconception of transferring trumpet players to the horn is that, if they just play everything with the trigger down, that it's going to be trumpet fingerings. That is not correct. You are actually playing like a bass clef B flat instrument. And whereas the open series of the B flat instrument is concert B flat, which low brass players know, the open series for concert B flat is first position or open, right? So you can't, it's not a one-to-one transfer. So just debunk that myth real quick. Okay, so let's talk about you've done the instrument selection process, you've got the kids, they've got their instruments, and it's the first month, first day, first week, whatever, of class. How are you starting them off and getting them going?
So what we do that I really like is when we start school, we actually don't start with instruments. It's probably a week and a half to 2 weeks before we even look at them. So what we do, we teach rhythm first. We use teaching rhythm logically to teach. I think that book is like $20.
Yeah.
Really easy. From Darcy Williams out of Texas at Stiles Middle School. It's super, really good, really concise. And I mean, she literally in that book has written down what she says, like quote, I say this. But it's a good way to teach everybody at once. You teach classroom procedures. The biggest thing when you teach any instrument, I think, is isolating the variables.
Right.
Teach one thing at a time. If you start with an instrument in the book on the first day, it's just gonna be chaos. It's gonna be crazy. The first thing you do is teach them how they come into the room.
Yeah.
How do you sit in there? That kind of stuff. So we teach classroom procedures first. That's usually the first day. We don't get to rhythm the first day.
Yeah.
The next series of days we do teaching rhythm logically. We get all the way. We do quarter notes, eighth notes, half notes, whole notes, and the corresponding rest. They know how to count all of that before we look at the instrument. We teach how to read trumpet clef or bass clef, whatever your instrument coincides with. All that before we teach the instrument. When we do get to the instrument, we start. They don't open anything. They put their case in front of them, and then we put it all the way down on the floor. The latches face you, and you go around and make sure the latches are facing the right way, and do some with that because that could be a disaster.
Brass methods, kids, you know this well at this point.
And so we make sure the latches are all facing the right way. We flip the latches, stop. We don't look at it yet, and we make sure everybody's doing each step correctly. Open the case, you make the Zelda, and it's this big shiny thing, and they want to touch it right away, but you don't touch it. Literally everything, one thing at a time. After that, we grab the instrument. You teach them how to hold it. One thing that's really important: make sure we don't do anything to damage the lead pipe. That's like day one horn, 6th grade thing. This is a very important part of the instrument. If something happens to it, you can't really repair it. You just have to replace it.
Yeah, it's pretty much the end.
Yeah, it's and the lead pipe is tapered on the inside, and you just can't repair it. It's gone. So we don't hold it by the lead pipe ever. You can hold it by next to the bell where this little brace is. You can hold it there. You can hold it next to the valves. You can hold it by the bell. That's a really good way to not hit the bell on stuff. If you hold it by the bell while you're carrying it, the tendency is if you're holding it inside to hit something with the door, on a door, on a wall or something, and carrying it here to guard it a little bit better because they don't want to hit their fingers on anything. You can hold it up here as well.
Yeah.
That's the strong parts of the horn.
So Meredith has like this big checklist of things and it's like this living document that she keeps adding and editing over the years that she's been teaching of day 1 and day 2 and day 3 and everything that she does. What do I say? And in the order of operations. We're not going to go through on this video everything in that checklist, but what we're going to do is we're going to send you guys a copy of that. So that you can have it for yourself and you can edit it and we'll give you your own unique copy that you can edit and add to it. It's a really great resource and it's something that really every teacher should start doing is save what they do every year so that they can go back. By the time you finish the school year, you've forgotten what what you do. So rather than go through everything in that that checklist, what are some things, some, mnemonic devices, some funny catchphrases that you use to show proper posture, hand position, embouchure, how to hold the instrument and get the sound? What are some things that you use?
With embouchure, I don't really use any like tips or tricks or anything. It's just a slow, one step at a time process. So with that, I kind of treat it as it's not like an instant thing. It has to happen over time.
Yeah. That's what it is actually like a very complex thing.
Yes, and it's hard to teach a complex thing without giving too much information because you never want to overwhelm them with anything. They'll freak out and do weird stuff because they're going to do weird stuff anyway. So try to give them as little information as you can at a time, but with it being enough to get done what you need to get done. I mean, I don't really have a lot of like funny things. It's just when I have a duck foot or flipper on my horn, you won't have these standard on the horn. So if he's any messing with that, just ignore that. But we, just thumb 1, 2, 3, pinky goes in the pinky ring. I have to catch myself sometimes because I teach horns after trumpets. Trumpets, and get your pinky out of the pinky ring.
Yeah.
Keep it in there.
Some things to watch out for, is making sure that this left hand is very relaxed. We want the kids to be just as calm as possible. Yeah, and my wrists hurt from years of playing the horn, but making sure that this is just straight, not doing this or this, just making a nice straight line. And then with the right hand, a lot of people say different things. Skip said, like you're holding water in your hand.
Yeah, that's from the old school.
Yeah.
You got water in your hand. You can put your hand on the back of your head, and it makes that
that's
shape.
That's perfect.
Yeah, freeze it, look at it, and your thumb. One of my biggest pet peeves is playing the horn like that. But you really need to cover it. Like keep your thumb on your on next to your palm.
I like telling them just judo chop.
That's what in this book we're gonna talk about later. I like that a lot. They do karate chop. Yeah. Because you can't karate chop somebody. That's so funny to demonstrate. I go up to kids. You can't karate chop somebody like that. What is this? Like, you can't do that. So you got a karate chop.
Yeah.
And then I like to teach them to most horns. Well, all horns will have a brace here. They're mostly diamond shaped. Is yours a circle? You got a diamond. Yeah. Some of them are a circle. So we teach them to, after they do their karate chop, your thumbnail lines up with the tip of that brace. That's where your thumb goes. Yeah. Yes, underneath it. And we treat our bell like a clock. So the top of the bell is 12, 3, 6, 9, and the legal zones are from 12 to 3. Anything from 3 o'clock to 12 o'clock is illegal. We don't touch there. That's bad. Bad. So we put our thumb up here, karate chop, thumb inside, hand is from about 12 to 3. The weight of the instrument kind of rests across your knuckles. And you'll see, well, like, for example, too, if they're wearing a sweatshirt like I am, ask them to roll up their sleeve. They'll come in with, like, huge puffy jackets, and they'll just throw off the sound. And so just ask them no matter what, just roll up your sleeve. Even if it's just a t-shirt, that's just a standard, roll up your sleeve. So it doesn't cover, produce bad tone, and make it really flat. And I like to also, then this is before we do on the leg or off the leg or anything. Everybody has the same hand position.
And do you teach this sitting down to start with, or do you sometimes have to stand and then sit?
We stand before we sit.
Which you've already done this standing and sitting beforehand. You've already taught posture up until this point.
Yes, and the only difference between standing and playing a horn and sitting and playing a horn is that your knees are bent.
Yeah,
that's the only difference.
That's exactly what Skip said in the last video. You can tell she's a student. Well, and that's the benefit of the right hand position, because you can just that goes ahead and sets you up for that.
This is the support, not your leg.
For a long time, people would, at least when I started, they taught us the cup, but we would do it upside down. and then I had no idea how to play standing up. And fortunately, I had really great teachers that would fix this problem for me later on down the road. And then, of course, as Skip added the other day, is that perfectly sets you up to do stop horn technique.
Exactly. And it's just a more efficient way of doing it. It's not that necessarily other ways are wrong. It's just this way kind of streamlines everything. But I wouldn't teach this.
No.
I wouldn't do it.
Wouldn't wish that upon my enemies.
Yeah, you want to set them up for success, and they're going to do weird things no matter what you tell them to do, but they're going to be extra weird with that kind of stuff. It's not very natural. So
just as just a sort of catch-all, judo chop, 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and then bring the horn to you.
Yes, you never, ever, ever go to your instrument no matter what you play. And that's why I like to exactly. Well, they'll do this. They'll try to play like this, and they'll look off to the side.
Yeah.
They'll be playing music. They won't be looking at the stand. They'll just play whatever. Some of them can pick it out and just play it.
Yeah.
So you have to constantly monitor what they do, especially the hand. A lot up front, check their hands every day. Walk around the room. Don't teach from the podium. You got to get around. The hands on.
And that informs as well of whether or not the horn rests on the knee or not. Because the factor there is how tall is the torso of the kid. If they're short, then they might have to. But if they're very tall, then the horn's sitting right here, right?
You go ahead and pick it up.
So just go ahead and pick it up.
Yeah, and there are a lot of different variations. The biggest thing to keep in mind when you're setting up the horn is the angle of the lead pipe. As long as that is correct, everything else will usually fall into place. You want it just slightly downward. Mouthpiece in the center. Downward about a 45. Maybe a little shallower. But that's it. You want to facilitate that. That's the important thing. So getting it in the center of your lips is not necessarily successful if your bell is on your leg. You have to have it at that angle. Some kids will want to lean back and play like this, or put their horn too far forward on their leg like that. So that's why I like to teach. After I teach the hand position, we stand up to hold it. Because naturally, when you stand up to hold the horn, you're probably going to hold it the right way.
Yeah.
But a lot of times when you stand up, you hold it right, and then you sit down, the horn's kind of off to the side. And if they can hold it, if they're big kids and they can hold it from the start, just go and have them hold it that way from the start. I like to do, not every kid can do that right away. Most of mine this year started on the leg, and after Christmas, we'll come back and say, you've grown so much, we're going to move to the advanced technique, and that makes them feel super special. And that's kind of how you can progress it. It's not that you're doing it wrong and now we're doing it right. We started out the 6th grade way, and now we're doing it the advanced way. This is the grown-up way to do it. The kid feels good and empowered, and they just move on to the more advanced techniques. If the student's really short, they're kind of hitting up here. What I teach mine anyway is your feet go to the right of the chair legs. So your right leg is on the right side of the chair leg. Your left leg is also on the right side of the chair leg. And that kind of helps too, because sometimes when you play the horn, especially on your leg, there's a natural kind of twist to your torso. Sure. And so that way they can look at you and still have this set up correctly. But this can be have a variation among all the kids. You can change the height of your knee by you can take your toe, if your toes are flat on the ground, and put it a little bit under your chair. That changes the height. So if it's too high, when they hold it correctly standing up and they sit down and it's like this, have them move that leg. They can also scoot forward more on their chair, and that'll give you even more space to get lower. I mean, you can probably get wherever you need to go by doing it that way. So I would have them sit. I don't like to get them to turn their chair. I prefer to turn my chair when I play, but I don't want them to be, especially if you're teaching full band and your horn's like in the center, in the middle of everything, don't have them rearranged. Just turn slightly, put their feet on the other side. Yeah. And making sure that they're looking, it's their face, the stand, you, in that order. Because they will, like I said, they'll do weird stuff and they won't look at their music.
Right. So we'll just do one more thing about just getting started before we go on to other topics, but just making a sound. And you said that there's a very long process with copy stirrers and all kinds of stuff, but is there truncated version of that?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. We start with mouthpieces only. We'll probably, I think this year we did it 3 or 4 days before we put it on the instrument. And something I've told you before, we have First Note Fridays, and that kind of keeps me in check too, because when you do just mouthpiece for an entire week, that's super boring to the kids. Like they want to play. That's what we're here to do. They want to play so bad. And so no matter where we are on that Friday, we're gonna stick it in the lean pipe and make a sound.
Meredith, like usually. So just to add on to that, so they spend the whole week basically adding more and more pieces to the instrument, and by Friday is the first day that they play a true note on the instrument, and usually you record it or something.
Oh yeah, because I love to go back and hear it.
And pretty much every kid manages to make a sound on that first day, right? But because you've spent the whole week making sure that you've added the cylinders for the wheels of the car and the AC, and you got the steering train on it and all this stuff. So you built the car before you actually started.
Exactly, one part of the time. And it's not that stops once we start playing. We don't put our mouthpiece on our instrument and then we're only playing the instrument. We do mouthpiece stuff every day. I think it's probably November, halfway through November when we did mostly
just concert stuff, getting ready.
Concert prep, because even then, part of it is not necessarily when you get to a certain point. It's not necessarily looking for is your chin flat, are your corners firm, that kind of stuff. It's pitch matching, it's sirens, that we're working on range extension, that kind of stuff. And there's so much less resistance on the mouthpiece, unless you just have so much more facility over your air, because this adds so much resistance. And so that really helps open up everything.
Sure.
So I know that's not the beginning, but just to kind of get through it, we also teach them the parts to everything. Nobody taught me that in 6th grade. I didn't know for an embarrassingly long time. So I tried to go back and teach them the things that I didn't know. So we start with the mouthpieces, is the rim, cup, the shank. We all hold it the same way. To start with, I like to do 2 fingers on top, thumb on the back, at the bottom of the shank. If they have it up here, that's probably too much pressure. I tell them to put it in their non-dominant hand, so that with your dominant hand, you could accidentally use a little bit of pressure, too much pressure. That's kind of, some people do it, some people don't. I don't think it's a big deal either way. I just to kind of double and make sure, I tell my dominant hand. You'll see the straw exercise later, but we also always make sure we lick our lips before we play. We never play dry. You'd be surprised at how many people will start teaching and not tell them to lick their lips. And they just play dry, and it's so hard. But always lick your lips. By this point, we know what our trumpet face is or our horn face, so we practice making our horn face before we even put that on. We do that exercise over and over and over. Difference between resting face, horn face.
Making those parentheses muscles shake.
Flat chin. If you see that bunchy chin, they're pushing their bottom lip up into the top lip. Too much. And that's not going to facilitate good vibration. So we lick our lips, make our horn face. We put it right in the center. When you check their mouthpiece placement, go ahead and make sure they're doing that downward angle. If they do it here when you put the instrument up, they're not going to hold it right. So make sure we have that downward angle here. And when I stole this from the conference in Texas. We do air to vibration. We start with the straw exercise we do. It gets them with air flowing without their teeth touching on the air part. So we say our top lip, our lips are like a garage. This is the garage door. This is the floor. Your bottom lip doesn't move. Your top lip starts open, and then it starts to close a little bit. And what you do is you blow air. You blow lots of air, and you slowly take that garage door and close it. And as soon as you start to make a vibration, you stop. That's where your garage door lives. That's how open it needs to be. So we've already taught how to breathe in through the corners, all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's just on the mouthy. So I do 1, 2, 3 breathe play. So we're tapping our toes, we're sitting up tall, and we're doing 1, 2, 3. Now I'll just, I'll do my thing. And they just play. It's okay if they go 10 seconds without making a sound to start with. That's okay. I like that exercise a lot because so many people will play with their lips just smashed up against each other.
People try to start with the buzz. They'll say, "All right, flex your lips and." Right. That's you really want as minimum amount of pressure as possible. And that exercise is training them to find the inflection point of how much can I get away with, how much relaxation can I get away with before having to, go further. Because I think the thing that holds back all players, period, from young to old, is their relationship with pressure. and we try to teach that from a young age of just relax.
Yeah, and something that I learned that kids might try to do instead of starting with lots of air, moving their lips toward each other, is they'll start with slow air and move to faster air, and faster air leads to more vibration even if your lips don't move at all. So they'll start with their lips too close together and just use slow air, fast air instead of fast air moving their lips together, and so they might be too pinched. So listen for that. If it starts soft and gets louder, their air does. They make a buzz. That way they're not doing it right. You need to start with super loud air, because you have to spread your lips apart for the air to come through. Right. And you can't find that point if you're not using fast air.
Sure.
And so that gets them using lots of air to start with, and that's really important on the horn. You can't use baby air and play right notes on the horn. You gotta be able to support that to start with.
Is there anything you want to add about getting started before we move on to other topics?
I don't know. If I think it's a later with you.
And again, there's a lot of stuff in this checklist that we'll send you guys.
Just be patient.
Yeah.
They're gonna miss notes.
Yeah. And I think the thing to emphasize is that everything that you've talked about is one step at a time. When you think about what it means to be a beginner student, and you're holding this foreign piece of metal, and for many kids who they've never read music before, you're teaching them a whole new language, a whole new source of symbology, right? That what do these abstract symbols mean? And then you've also got to do this muscle training technique and breathing technique and posture and all these types of things. Break the car down, right, and build it one step at a time.
Yeah, and a lot of things we talked about with the horn, you could do full brass. If you have a whole brass class, or even if you have woodwinds and brass at the same time, you can teach all this to the brass at once, just with each the idiosyncrasies to each instrument as you go. Just make sure you get the little details. With all these exercises, you can do full brass.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, these are ubiquitous to everybody.
Mm-hmm. Just real quick, the moving slowly through concepts doesn't mean it has to be boring.
Right.
Make it fun.
Everything's a game.
Yes, make things games. And just as a side note, I don't mind long note contests to start with after you have a good foundation, especially on horn for higher notes.
Sure. Because
it trains them to make their embouchure a little bit stronger and to use fast air for a long time. They're going to be a little bit more accurate. But once you get past over the hump, I really don't like. I mean, you want to make sure that you're not reinforcing bad technique when you do long note contests.
Sure.
If you're playing full band, that might be a little bit harder. But yeah, just as an aside, they're not long note contests. They're not evil as long as you have intention behind it and teach it.
Okay, so some recommended horns for beginners.
I like the Yamahas. Yamaha tends to be a little bit smaller. I think you have an 8D?
Con, yeah.
So one of the things that makes mine is not a Yamaha. Mine's a Hans Boyer, but it's wrapped the same way. You see, they're wrapped differently. The Yamaha 567 is a student model of this wrap. It's a little bit smaller. You can see the differences in the main tuning and F tuning and that kind of stuff. It's a little bit easier for them to handle because it doesn't take quite as much air. That's kind of a monster for sixth
Yeah,
graders.
the Con 8D in particular is a very big, heavy instrument. It's and I like it because it gives me a nice warm sound and it's pretty open.
Yeah,
but the action on it is much different from yours.
Yeah, they're a lot different. But yeah, this wrap, the Geyer wrap is just a little bit smaller.
Yeah, more compressed.
Yeah, so it doesn't take quite as much air to start with to be really successful. The 667 is like the grown-up version of the 567, and the 671 is a newer horn. It's a newer model, but it's based on the 667.
These are all Yamaha. So Yamaha 567, 671, and 667 are all good beginner models.
They're all good quality. They hold up really well.
The Con 8D is fine for beginners, but again, it is a bigger instrument, so it's just stuff to consider. And then Holton.
Yeah, the Holton 179 is kind of an analog to the 8D. It's also pretty big and burly.
Yeah, and a lot of people hold on to that 179 through college.
Oh, yeah, that's
same thing with my Con 8D. That'll last you a long time.
If you have a 667 8D or 179, they'll last you at least through your undergrad. I mean, if not farther. I mean, there are professionals everywhere that play on the 667 or 8D.
Yeah.
It's pretty standard.
Yeah. And so going back to yours is a Hans Hoyer, which is, and this was like a prototype version.
Oh yeah, Skip can tell you that the whole history. He knows every detail of this horn. I bought it from a band director who bought it from a professional horn player, Dave Ohanian, who played with Boston. And Hans Hoyer made 5 of these, and he sent them over to different horn players, and he sent it to Dave Ohanian to kind of try out. And he played it for a while, and he sold it. But yeah, it's not really, to my knowledge, there's no real like model number. It has a serial number, but that's about it. It was just kind of a model for the next horn. I like it a lot. It's pretty cool.
Mouthpieces. What do you recommend?
Just about anything MDC to start with, or
medium,
MC.
Yeah, medium cup or medium deep.
Cup or medium deep. Holton Farkas is pretty. The Holton Farkas MDC is pretty standard. I think it's a 16.5 millimeter rim. And the medium cup or medium deep cup are okay. You don't want something that's too shallow or too deep. So it's, kind of in the middle is fine. The Schilke 30 is pretty similar. There's a brand, Fax, Faxx, that makes a lot of copies of those. They're pretty much the same, and they're like half the price. So if you're looking for a budget something, the Fax MDC is fine.
Yeah. As the kids get older, it really, mouthpiece choice depends on sort of like the ensemble you're playing in and the type of literature you're playing. Some people prefer to stick with a nice shallow mouthpiece to nail a lot of those lead parts, but generally I'm sticking with like my medium deep cup for pretty much everything.
Yeah, and really with any brass instrument, the equipment is not what gets you there.
Yeah,
it might help facilitate, but you should be able to play whatever on whatever.
You really don't see horn players swapping mouthpieces all the time. In general, there's so much about the horn that you have to be so adaptable. Yeah. You're transposing all the time. You're playing a bunch of different things, and you just have to be adaptable. So like the Schilke 30, any Holton Farkas medium deep cup or medium cup should be good. The mouthpiece I use is a Giardinelli C15. I don't know that they make these anymore, but I love it.
I hate the rim on those.
Oh yeah, she can't play on it. I love it. It's perfect. My life changed after getting that.
Yeah, I play on a Dennis Wick, a 5N. It's got a flatter rim. Every time I have to stop myself from saying Ghirardelli. Oh. Like the chocolate or the Giardinelli mouthpieces. The rims on those are a lot more. I don't know. I feel like it digs into my lip. This is pretty flat on this mouthpiece, which is the same as the Holton Farkas and the Schilke are pretty flat rim too. The Giardinelli is a little bit more. I don't know. Pointy is not right. But
yeah, biting. Yeah. What are some tools that you have on hand all the time?
Always in my
both
case.
For you and for your kids.
Literally every day somebody asks for these. Now, these are just like the Stanley screwdrivers. I got it at Walmart.
Yeah. I have like 3 of those.
Yeah, and I even put, because the kids use it all the time, so I even put like a G for Greene on like every single individual screwdriver. So if anybody steals it, I know where it came from. but these all the time. The Yamaha horns use Phillips screws. Mine, I don't really have to use mine a lot because I have mechanical linkage.
It's important to have screwdrivers because the valve tops are all screwed in. So
yeah, if you need to restring a valve, you have to have screwdrivers. You can't just wing it and use your fingers. There we go. You have to use screwdrivers. Most horns use the flathead. The Yamaha uses Phillips head a lot. I always had my metronome tuner. I don't think they make this one anymore. It's super old. It's the Korg. Mine's a TM40, but I think now the TM60 is the newest one. I actually think the TM60 is cheaper than the TM50. But you can also get like a microphone hookup to this if you really want to. You can hook up. It might help like double reeds or horns to start with. If you work at a school that's super bougie, you can get it for your kid, to make sure they have right partials. I always have that. I like to use, for horn, you need rotor oil, you need slide grease, you need valve oil, and I like to use, since again I have mechanical linkage, so I have bearing and linkage oil. Mine's the Hetman 14.
Yeah, rotor oil is different from valve oil.
It is, and here's my rotor oil. I like to use the 12 for the straight up rotor.
I believe valve oil is thinner. Is that right? Or it's a thinner, more not as viscous.
Well, yeah. Well, that's you can get different viscosity. That's what these on the Hetman. What I really like is it says like lubricant 12 and lubricant 14. You can get different viscosities.
Okay.
So when you get to a certain point, you can really pick and choose. The rotor oil says in parentheses like rotor oil, and bearing and linkage it says rotary valve. But like I use, I mean this is getting kind of technical. This is my mechanical linkage. Has these little needles so you can get in there and you need to oil, let's see if I can do this, all of these joints. And even when you use rotor oil, regardless of what kind of instrument you play, this is something nobody taught me until college. You even need to oil back here on the back of the rotor in this little section and keep it upside down and let it work itself in there, kind of wiggle the valve a little bit because that'll get in towards the bottom of the rotor. It's a little bit detailed, but
so you have mechanical linkage, so you don't have strings.
No.
But pretty much every horn player, unless you have mechanical linkage, should have string on them at all times in case it breaks.
And being a band director too, I mean, in my desk drawer, there's string everywhere. But I use blue juice for my valve oil.
Yeah, I do too. So mutes. Meredith and I both have two different types of mutes. I have a Dennis Wick, which people are very familiar with Dennis Wick. They make like the really cheap one as well, that red and white mute that a lot of people get for like $20. I don't want to say don't buy those, but they're not like high end. You're not going to be able to tune those. What's special about these types of mutes? First of all, they're pretty large. But
it's a standard straight.
Yeah, but they're bigger than the regular red and white Dennis Wicks. But on the inside of these, there is a little sort of piece of metal that you can adjust up and down. And what it does is it basically changes the volume of the inside of the chamber here, and that allows you to tune it sharper or flatter. So it's really helpful.
Mine is an Eon Blue. This comes with a quick story. Should I tell this story? Sure. I went with a friend to unclaimed baggage in Scottsboro, and on the shelf we saw there's no mute case right there. I say mine, but there was a mute case on the shelf, and I was like, oh, how weird. There's a case for a mute up here, and I grabbed it. There was a mute inside, and it was this one. And this is Eon Blue is like the horn guru. He makes mutes, like they're super fancy. He helps make horns. Like if you're a horn player, you know who Eon Blue is. Yeah. But this is a special edition. It's called Thunder, and it's like one of 77, 39, 77. And I took it out of the case, and I was kind of like, is this really limited edition, or did it say that so we could like sell them? Or I was like, what's Eon got kind of up his sleeve? And I called somebody just to make sure, one of the doctoral students at that time. And I was like, this is $50. Should I get it? And she was like, oh my gosh, yes. And so I looked it up. This is a $200 mute.
So, lesson, check unclaimed baggage. You never know what instrument accessories you can find.
Yeah, it's super fancy. But yeah, mine is tunable as well. Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much no matter, and once you kind of move up from the red and white, this is kind of the standard shape. They, like you were saying, they come in tunable or not tunable. I would go ahead and get tunable if you can. But if the red and white's all you got, and that's fine.
Yeah.
It'll work.
Yeah. I mean, I use the red and whites in my band. So some beyond like essential elements, standard of excellence, whatever ensemble method book that you're using, we're going to show you some other method books that we recommend for beginners and sort of going into the advanced area. I'm going to show you some that I recommend. So I think every college horn player is used to this, but the 60 Selected Studies for Horn by Koprash. This is more of an advanced sort of thing, but I would say as you're getting into high school, start taking a look at these. And a lot of like the All-State etudes may be pulled from these, so it's a good resource to have. I know you like this book. This is the Joseph Singer Embouchure Building for Horn. I use this with all my private lessons for any age, and they're just good warm-ups in general.
Yeah. Especially your low horn, working on your low horn stuff. There's a lot of good technique in there.
Yeah, and she's a much better low horn player than I am. This is just a good scale collection book. This is good for any brass player. Claude Gordon, brass playing. And then another good collection. This is sort of like the Arbin book for the horn, 335 Selected Studies, and there's a book 2 as well. I think, yeah, book 2. A lot of the All-State etudes are going to be pulled out of here as well. This is basically like the Arbin book. And then a standard for really every horn player that they should have is their orchestral horn. And then some non-horn books that I use in my lessons and for myself. Trumpet players know the Getchell books, the first book of practical studies. These have a lot of really good, easy etudes in them that I use to teach sight reading and develop embouchure strength. We do like burnouts and stuff like that. There's 2 books of those, first book and second book. You can see how used it is. And then for teaching bass clef playing, I use this book pretty religiously. It's just a trombone Tyrell book. Trombone players have probably got this in their collection. I use this because it's not a whole lot of, a lot of the horn method books are written in treble clef. Yeah. So to find like really good bass clef stuff, get a trombone book. What did you have some as well? I got one more. This is more of just good for reading. There's a lot of really cool stuff in here. This came out relatively recently, and there's a lot of cool conversations about like fast twitch muscles versus slow twitch muscles, sprinters versus cross-country runners, and a lot of that comes into play for brass playing as well. So I would give that a look if you're interested.
Yeah, coming from more of a less of a horn, well, at school, I've started using this. This is a new book. It came out last summer. It's called Recipe for Success. It's written by Janet Nye and Karen Houghton. They are big names in Texas. If you play horn, you know the Houghton family too. Like they're all like professional horn players and horn makers and repair people, and just they know everything horn. It's called Recipe for Success because it's set up like a recipe book. It has different things, appetizer, main course, dessert, and it's in 3 levels. They designed it to be, kind of like 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. And one thing I like about this book, it has them playing low pretty quickly. They start on C below the staff.
Yeah.
And this year for me teaching, we use essential elements for our band-wide method book, so it's kind of like a mix between Recipe for Success and essential elements. But what I really like about this book too is there are a lot of good visuals. They have examples of like good stuff and bad stuff, and it's actual students that they teach, and it's actual horn players teaching actual things and stuff like. When I saw this too, I was like, oh, this is for me because a lot of it. Yeah, it's got the clock, so it's a lot of good visuals. And a lot of it was stuff that I teach anyway, and it's just kind of in a concise book, and it's really good for beginners. You know, and it has, you know, an ideal embouchure, blah blah blah. What I like too is at the end of each thing, it has your objectives. This is the goal for everything. So even if you have this book and you're not teaching just horns, you're teaching full band, you can kind of, you know, when you plan for a lesson, are you doing these things for your horn players or for all your brass players? I like that it's a concise method and has a lot of stuff in one place. And it even has, you know, at the end it has duets and trios, and it's got some bass clef, it's got glossary of terms, it's got, you know, FAQs for the horn, and you can really. Karen and Janet are really easy to get in touch with, and they'll answer you like right away.
Yeah,
they're super nice and super helpful. You know, I emailed them because they sent me an email saying my books were delayed when I got them. I got a class set for the school, and you know they sent me an email, your order's delayed, whatever, and I'm like, it's fine. But I asked them, I can't remember what I asked them, I asked a question about it, and they were like, oh, here's more stuff. And it was like an addendum to this. Nice. Like, you can copy it and give it out, and you know, if you need anything else, let me know. You know, it was like for free, you know, all this stuff. Yeah. So they're really nice, very approachable, and they're really good resources. I really like that.
People should reach out to just these types of people in general, because a lot of times they just want to help. They're not these sort of monolithic, you know, people in legend. You know, they are human beings. Okay, once my cat gets out of the way of these questions, we'll answer some of your questions that you guys sent in. So we kind of already answered this a little bit, but you know, how do you set up beginners for success? As it seems hard to play the French horn well, especially with partials. You know, I think just to reinforce, like, take everything step by step.
Yeah.
And you hit this a little bit earlier, but like, there's no right note to start on.
No.
It's that, can they change notes?
Right.
Can they do that basic lip slur if they're holding down the trigger from C to F, right? Mm-hmm. F to C, you know, high, low, low, high, hot air, cold air, fast air, slow air, and just go slowly.
Yeah, and two, if you do it right, you move slowly, you make all these good, you form all these new neural pathways, form muscle memory, reinforce all these good things. And once that's in place, then the pace can just, you go as, you know, as fast as you can after that. It's not that everything in band is so slow. The fundamentals are important. If you have those set up correctly, you don't have to go back and fix that stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of people, they just want to get into it, get into the weeds, and they have to go back and reteach or go back and fix.
There's like two worries that young middle school band directors make, right? Is one, they're worried that their kids are going to be bored, right? And then that's going to lead to bad classroom management issues, right? And so they're like, oh, I've got to move quickly, right? And I've got to throw all this stuff at them. So that's more of evidence of poor classroom management, right? Because so if you have that under control, then you can go as slow as you want, right? And then the other thing too is, you may feel rushed to present some sort of grand performance at your Christmas concert. But a performance at the Christmas concert can be line 12 out of the Essential Elements book.
You know? When I taught at Winfield, that's what we did. You know, we did I wrote a thing. Oh, it was so cheesy, but the kids loved it. It was, you know, it was the night before Christmas, and all through the band room, and so we made, you know, like this big poem from the was the night before Christmas, and then the kids would say the poem, and then we'd play something that corresponded in it, and it was lines out of the book, so it kind of it wasn't like, here's line 12, here's line whatever, you know, kind of integrated the kids into the performance.
Success is what you decide it is.
Yeah, and even like we play at Thompson, we have like this past year we had 136 graders. We played 2 songs in our Christmas concert, and it was fine. It was great. We played from the Essential Elements Christmas. We played Jingle Bells and Up on the Housetop. That's what we play every Christmas.
Yeah, I cannot recall or imagine any mom that's gonna come in and be like, man, I really wish you guys played 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 Christmas songs, you know, if you play 2 and they're little babies up there and they made a sound.
The first time that mama hears the whole band play and they can tell that it's Jingle Bells, like that.
Well, the
they're
thing
gonna
is,
love it.
they know what those kids sound like when they come home, right?
Right.
And they've heard the growth, right? And then when they see, this,
Oh, they're
wow,
gonna
I
be
can't
amazed.
believe what they have done.
Every
It's,
Christmas, oh my gosh, how do you do it? And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know. But no, not really. But they're gonna.
Sorry, our
Okay,
cat
don't
is
eat that
messing
cord.
around with cords again.
But yeah, they're gonna love it no matter what. They're little babies on the stage. Don't forget at the end to get them to stand up and face their mama so that she can get her pictures. That's very important. That's
Yeah.
how I teach it.
I would say the last thing too is don't compare yourself to other sixth grade bands, not in the area or in the world. It's what have you been able to do with your kids, and where were they starting, and where have you gotten them?
Mm-hmm.
That's what matters. You don't need to compare that to anyone else but your own standard.
Yeah, it's not a competition. Everybody is just trying to do their best. Just do the best you can.
What is your regular first day routine with your horn players? We kind of got into that a little bit. Within the first year of teaching, what goals would you like your students to accomplish versus what happens on average?
Well, those two things kind of work together, and it changes from year to year. Mm-hmm. Every year I've taught at Thompson, our classroom setup has changed. We started out with we have 3 beginning band classes, and for the first year everybody was all mixed up in every class, and we kind of just the other band director and I just kind of took turns lead teaching and then taking small groups. The next year was the same thing; they were all mixed up, but I would take the brass from that class and percussion, and he would take the woodwinds. And then the next year, we had it completely split up, brass, woodwinds, in every class from the start. And this year, we're able to teach one instrument at a time. So every year, we've been able to achieve more, not just because of the class setup, but because you learn the school, you learn the culture, you learn the kids. You get to know how far you can go. Start with the end in mind. What do you want them to know by the end of the school year, and set goals going backwards. And I would do that too by semester. And whatever, if you don't make it to your goal by the end of the first semester, just do the second semester. It's fine. Yeah. And you kind of adapt that way. Let me read that question one time.
What would you like your students? What would you like them to accomplish versus what happens on average?
Okay. Yeah. Well, we kind of what we've been working on kind of as a group too is this exact question: what do we want them to know by the end of 6th grade? And I think if you have different categories, like what rhythms do you want them to know? What dynamic vocabulary do you want them to have? What notes, what ranges do you want them to know? On the horn, ideally they know at least low A to F, top line F in the staff, if not lower than that. We play lower than that with lip slurs. We don't necessarily read the notation of, pedal F or thumb F down below the staff. With rhythms, like I said, in the first 2 weeks, we teach them whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes. When we started the quarantine, we were already to ties and dotted notes and that kind of stuff. Dotted quarters, dotted halves, tied notes of all kinds, and 16th notes. That's kind of where we are rhythmically. Notes with their corresponding rests. They know the general dynamics, forte, mezzo forte, mezzo piano, piano, 4 levels, and just kind of differentiating between those. We play duets out of the book. At the end of the year, we kind of work on a solo piece with like all the horns will have one little baby piece, and all the trumpets have one little baby piece. And if they go to solo and ensemble, they just play that there. If not, we just work on it in class, and they can play the solo like in class. So working on independence, and I like to assign them things, especially in the second semester, that we don't play in class. They're in charge of learning the line out of the book, whatever book it is. We use essential elements. So I don't tell them anything, and they have to come back and play it as a playing test. And it kind of gives you an opportunity to evaluate what they've got going on, but fostering independence. And that kind of teaches them how to practice. They don't just copy stuff from class. They have to integrate and adapt what you've done from class to learn something new.
What is the hardest thing about teaching middle school students?
Besides everything.
I'll take this one. Is that kids are not when they show up they are not necessarily the same human being they were the day before, and you cannot guarantee that they'll be the same human being tomorrow. They are constant, living, changing, adapting, evolving kids, and you have to teach the kids that are in your room that day. And yeah, you got to
Oh,
be.
that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
And some kids will come back after Christmas. Some kids that have been special friends before Christmas will come back and they've got it together. They just something happens and their voice is deeper. And some kids they'll have it together, they'll come back after Christmas and they just are starting to fall apart a little bit. But yeah, that's the biggest thing is they're growing, adapting, changing all the time. The change is the only constant, in their lives. And,
so you've got to have an equal balance of empathy and rigidity.
Yes, stick to your yes.
Yeah.
Have your expectations. If they don't do it right, like when my concert band kids, like a couple weeks before MPA, they came in the room, they were too loud, and so we put all our instruments down, went back into the hallway, lined up, called them in by instrument, go sit down. Like it has to be very, very. You have to put your foot down with that kind of
It's
stuff.
okay to reset.
Yeah.
Common solos that are good for beginners. We don't necessarily have any specific ones. However, some good books that you can pull from. Well, first of all, this is an ensemble one, but like classical flex trios, any sort of flexible thing, that's great for ensemble stuff. You can pick and choose for any instrument. And I'm going to pull it up on the screen here. This one. Okay. Festival solos, the standard of excellence is very good. And Meredith likes this one, the classical festival solos. Both of them are just collections of solos that are good for that sixth grade area, and they both have like book 2 and 3 that you can use to teach. They all have accompaniments with them and piano recorded accompaniments that you can use to play over the speakers. I taught a sixth grade that was very small private school, and we had like maybe 6 to 10 kids in our beginner band. And so we weren't playing like Robert W. Smith's The Tempest for our spring concert. We weren't doing like all these big band pieces. What we were doing were flex trios and solos for our concerts, and the parents loved it and the kids loved it, And so you again, going back, you design your own expectations.
Well, doing that too, the kids, and they're putting on a recital, and they have to be so independent and confident and play in front of a group, and that teaches them so much in such a little time, and they become more reliable ensemble players because their solos are so good.
Last question: do you let your horn players rest their horns on their chair?
No, I do not. That's one big rule.
What's your catchphrase?
Oh, your instrument, the horn, plus gravity equals sad face. Because if you put it in your chair, something can happen. Even you have to tell the kids, even if you don't mean to, you could accidentally hit it. Somebody else could hit it, and it falls to the floor. If it can fall to the floor, it probably will fall to the floor.
So go ahead and
put it on the floor.
Put it on the floor, so that gravity doesn't do it for you.
Yeah, so I tell them put it under the chair, on the floor, and with the lead pipe up. Again, we do what we can to protect the lead pipe. If it's on the floor, especially if somebody steps on it, if somebody steps on it either way, it's going to be bad.
In general, don't
relieve the pressure.
Don't lay it like this. Usually, you want to like.
Yeah, and people worry about the valves, but the valves are very strong, and even if you put a little pressure, they move when you press it down. And some people are kind of wary of that, but that's what they're made to do. It's fine.
I would rather protect the linkages on the other side, the mechanics of it, rather than the valves. So, okay, well, that's it for this video. I know it was a little bit long, but I think this was a good chat, and we got just content for you guys. I hope that you guys are staying well and you're staying healthy. And just as a reminder, the video or your type reflection for this is due this upcoming Friday, and that is the 17th. And if you haven't already submitted your reflection for Skip's interview, please make sure you get that in. The next video that's going to be coming is Brooke's going to be interviewing a representative from Gadsden Music. So please continue to send in your questions for that. The topic of that video is going to be instrument repair, and not only some tips and tricks for your own ability to repair an instrument, but things that you shouldn't do, and what kind of services that music repair shops do. So again, thank you, Meredith, for participating in this. You were sort of an unwitting volunteer anyway. I kind of forced you to do this. You didn't have to, and we recorded on your birthday too. So happy birthday! And thank you to Jack, our cat, for making his cameos. So anyway, thank you everybody, and hopefully we'll see you soon.